Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
You were saying that you haven't seen Django Unchained?
I have not.
But you saw Jackie Brown.
I did.
And you like that one.
I did.
Yeah, I thought it was one people didn't like, but
I don't think it's one that people didn't like. I think it's one that not a lot of people saw.
Well, it was after Pulp Fiction, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I haven't seen Reservoir Dogs, and I have no desire to.
Very good.
Would I like it?
I think you'd like the character work and the writing.
I mean, okay. I haven't seen Reservoir Dogs. I haven't seen Jackie Brown. I actually have. Oh God, yeah. I haven't seen Django or Hateful Eight.
I haven't seen the Hateful Eight.
I'm slipping.
Django is just okay.
Well, I was going to say from a completionist standpoint, I would watch Reservoir Dogs, but I'm not excited about it.
It's good, though.
I don't like Pulp Fiction, though, so.
Love Pulp Fiction.
I mean, it's iconic, but I'm good. I've seen it like twice, and that's more than
When's
enough.
the last time, though?
Well, probably like, I think Hemingway, probably like 10 years ago.
You might like it better now.
I doubt it, but.
I am 0 for 3 in thinking you're gonna like things better now. So maybe we shouldn't.
Okay, hello everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristin.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show. On today's episode, we have a special guest commentator.
Return guest.
Mm-hmm.
Second time.
We have Tim.
Hello.
He is our friend and editor. And
Book editor.
Yeah. Yeah, not show editor.
Will's our podcast editor.
We're also in the middle of a torrential downpour. I don't know if any of this is going to pick up, but if you hear rain and thunder and lightning, there's nothing we can do about it.
Apologies.
It's not my stomach grumbling.
No, because we just ate, but...
Yes, we did.
So, yeah, this episode came from the last time Tim was on the show when we did our Q&A and our fairy tale conversation. And in conversation, he mentioned he had never seen Inglourious Basterds.
Which feels insane.
Well, you guys are known to get to movies on your own time.
Correct. I just finished watching Breaking Bad.
That's true. Okay.
I'm on top of it.
Okay.
It is my favorite Tarantino movie. Just outright, hands down. And it's up there for you.
I would say it's like 2 or 3. Because Death Proof and Kill Bill are... They all three kind of cycle.
I love Death Proof a lot, actually. I feel like that's a slightly hot take. And I do love Kill Bill, but the thing for me is that Kill Bill doesn't have the rewatchability that this does. There's something...
To me, it does.
Well, I love it, and I think most people would assume that for obvious reasons, that Kill Bill is my favorite, but... I was blown away. Like, if you had told me that my favorite Tarantino movie was going to be like the World War II epic, I would have smacked you right in the face.
Yeah, it feels a little off-brand, but like the story is so good, and the ladies in it are. I was going to say,
when you consider that it has, I think, his 2 strongest, like best written female characters to date, I think is that a hot take or?
I don't think so. I mean, I think. The Bride is certainly up there.
Oh, she's absolutely up there, but
she's not super nuanced.
Yeah, I think there's a quality in both of these women that was the takeaway for me. I remember when the movie first came out, some like dude that I worked on a movie with, he tweeted and he was like, a round of applause for Quentin. Round of applause for Quentin Tarantino's leading ladies.
Oh, yes. I mean, they're always good. I mean, Uma Thurman's been in a handful of them now, and she's really great in Pulp Fiction, and Reservoir Dogs has no woman in it, so that's why you would hate it. But
I also feel like in an alternate universe, like if this movie were made a few years sooner, that Uma Thurman would be Bridget.
She would probably be, Bridget, yeah.
But I think she might have been considered at one point. I feel like that was thrown around, but given the German aspect,
Yeah.
Diane is... We really just dove right in, so I guess... starting, you said you wanted to tell a story, and we haven't yet asked Tim. Did you want to tell your story first?
No, ask Tim.
What are we asking me?
I don't know.
If you liked it.
Okay. Oh, yes, I did like the movie.
Well, I'm gonna give you a good
He hasn't asked you yet.
Now that's gonna be locked into the edit. So, Tim, considering you have never seen this movie, and when did you watch it?
3 days ago?
3 days ago. Okay.
Yes.
Did you like it?
I did.
Okay. A lot, or?
Yeah, it was enjoyable. I purposely did not know much about it, and I looked into nothing
I was gonna say,
before
did
I
you have
watched
any
it.
expectations?
All I remember about the film going into it was the trailer with the upward shot looking into Brad Pitt and BJ Novak's face.
Okay.
And I don't remember what they said. I just remembered that shot from the trailers. I knew it involved Nazis, and that was it.
Cool. That's very little.
Correct.
So, yeah, that's... I don't know if it's an elephant in the room, but it's something that Kristen and I said where I was like, this watched differently 10 years ago when Nazis were such a faraway thing. It's a very ambitious movie. I don't think we're going to do spoiler free. I think we're really just going to dive in. So if you haven't seen it.
This movie's been out for 10 years.
Yeah, you're the kind of person.
It's your fault at this point.
Who cares about that. We're spoilers right out of the gate. But I remember when we saw it in the theaters, there was a point very late in the game.
Yeah.
I think the theater was on fire.
I was going to say, yeah.
And I leaned over to you and I was like, this isn't historically accurate, is it? And you were like, no.
It's like partially historically accurate.
To a point.
Like the bastards are real.
Okay.
But
And there was a war.
And there was... But no, that's not how Hitler died. That's not how most of those
Well, I was going to say,
died.
I know how Hitler died because it was in a ditch.
Covered in petrol.
On fire. It's weird. I'm only just now thinking, is it weird that Eva Braun's not in this movie?
I don't know when he was with Eva Braun, so I'm not sure.
World War II is a slight blind spot for me that I...
That's also like, do you really... there's two ways it could go, which is like totally a fantasy where she is also in on the like plot, like Operation Kino, or the other way where she's just sycophantic to Adolf Hitler, and I feel like...
And we have that in Julie Dreyfus.
Yeah, and I feel like Hitler doesn't need to be humanized with a girlfriend, so it's like...
Yeah, I guess. And I mean, you're right. I feel like we don't need a reason to like excuse the pretty blonde lady.
Exactly.
Like, to try and pull a Get Out with Allison Williams where people are like, but she's brainwashed too. She's a victim in her own right. Like,
and it's like, no, she's just as bad.
Allison's like, we gave you so many ways to know.
I feel like if you're letting Adolf Hitler dick you down, you're not good in the brain. You're like doing bad things too.
Yeah, that was, again, I really do wish that we weren't dealing with the current political climate because I feel like I'm going to treat a lot of this stuff very lightly because I think of it as...
Well, this movie's kind of a farce.
It's that's another thing about it is I was surprised when it came out and I was surprised rewatching it. I've seen it gobs of times, but I was like, this movie is actually so funny.
He's very good at funny dialogue.
Well, not even that. It's so much of it is situational.
That's true.
Like situationally funny where you have to be fully absorbing the movie, but there are so many times where, and also like situationally and ironically funny, where you are laughing at the fact that something is not working.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think that's what caught me most off guard going into the film is I didn't expect to laugh as much as I did. And a lot of that was the acting, from my point of view. I don't know how much of that was written and how much was their take.
He's stickler.
He's pretty strict with his scripts, yeah.
Especially with the Christoph Waltz character, what he put into that role. I don't remember
he got
who
an Oscar for it.
No, I know that. I don't remember who he's nominated against, but it's hard for me to imagine without looking back that anyone was better as a supporting actor that year.
This was my introduction to Christoph Waltz.
This was most Americans' introduction to Christoph Waltz.
I left the theater knowing his name. He is so funny, and that is so iconic. And I think it takes a specific kind of talent to make a Nazi I won't say likable,
Relatable.
but charming.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, from the beginning, I remember the opening scene, and this is, you said you wanted to tell the story, but...
So it's not like a great story, but it was the same year that District 9 came out, and it was 2 days in a row, and I made you go see District 9 with me because I was like, it's supposed to be really good, I think you would like it. And so we went and saw District 9, and it is hellish. If anybody has seen it, you can understand. There's like lots of experimentation.
I didn't know it was rated R, and I typically don't have issues with that, but every so often, if I'm not expecting something, like, see back to our first season 1 of Sabrina coverage.
Yeah.
If I'm not expecting something to go as hard as it does, it can really catch me off guard.
Right.
And there was a point in District 9 where they are experimenting on the dude, and they are specifically drilling, like, drills into his arms. And I went white.
He thought he might throw up and pass out at the same time.
I left the theater, didn't I?
I think for like a minute. For a minute, yeah.
Because I was just like, I can't handle this.
And so I had convinced you to go see that movie with me. And then the next day I was like, hey, you want to go to the movies? And you were like, I don't fucking know. What are we seeing today? And it ended up being this. And you ended up loving it.
It's Nazis.
Well, it wasn't the same time, but it was similar in year, like I think a year apart. But there was a similar thing when we went to see Sweeney Todd. And it was, as it was starting, I just went to you, what is this rated? And you were like, R. And I said, oh, I thought it was PG-13. And you're like, no, it's like a hard R. And I said, okay. And then there was a beat. And then I said, I kind of have an issue with throat slitting. I was like, I don't like it. And you looked at me.
Because going to see Sweeney Todd was your idea.
But it was like Lucille in Arrested Development with the Anyang. You just like glowered at me. And I was like, I was fine. I made it through the movie, but I just I was in a slight fantasy world where I was like, oh, I want to go see the new musical movie, the Tim Burton with like, Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. And I was like, whoa. But we were sitting there because I remember when Inglourious Basterds was announced and coming out and stuff, and I was like not even remotely interested.
Yeah, I would say I am the Tarantino person at this table.
Because you were like, well, you like Tarantino? And I was like, I like Kill Bill.
Yeah.
And I was like, I literally remember being like, what about a Quentin Tarantino World War II epic do you think even remotely sounds like my bag? And
I couldn't even, it was still too early for me to use Diane Kruger as like a selling point.
You used her because of Troy.
Yeah.
And I was like, famously didn't like Troy and thought she was miscast as Helen. Like,
she is.
It's just, in a general sense, it's not wise to hire like a thin, like a supermodel and be like, can you gain 15 pounds? Because she's going to put it on weird. It's like, if you want a bigger girl, hire a bigger girl. There's so many that are...
Her and Rose Byrne both in that movie.
Yeah, it's like, because they just look odd. It's... So... And I remember being in the theater just being like, oh boy, like, here we go. I might as well. And I feel like it was immediate. Like, not even minutes.
Yeah, the opening scene is spectacular.
And the first thing I said to you was, I was like, those sheets, because the daughter is hanging white linen.
Yeah.
And I was like, those sheets are going to be covered in blood in like less than 10 minutes. And
they're not.
It doesn't happen. And that's the moment where I was like, we're dealing with something different. We're dealing with something slightly different. And there is a fair amount of violence in this movie, especially towards the end. I kind of forgot how graphic it is towards the end. But it just coming off of Kill Bill, you know, and that was Death Proof was before this. So
yeah,
I was very, very surprised and impressed by how restrained it was and the places that he chooses to lash out, because the movie, there is such tension through the entire movie, and it somehow manages to ebb and flow a little bit, where it's like it's not excruciating. You're not like he gives you the moments of levity and stuff.
Well, to me, there's only 3 scenes of like major tension, because by the time you're at the end, even though you can't really see where it's going to go, you know that at best our heroes are getting out alive, and at worst no one's getting out alive of the theater. But the biggest moments of tension for me are the opening scene, the strudel scene, and the tavern scene. Mm-hmm. Everything else is like a lot more even keeled.
And that's another thing that, you know, considering that I consider myself a fan of Quentin Tarantino, I can't say off the top of my head if his other movies are quite like this, but this movie almost plays like a play. Mm. It's like a series of very intimate scenes and long scenes. Yeah. Like there's like several scenes in this movie that are, because I mentioned the tavern scene, I think is 30 minutes. We are in that one location.
Long, yeah.
And even the opening scene, the farm scene, Will, he was out here when we put it on, and then he went back in his office for like 25 minutes, and he came out and he was like, this scene is still on. And it doesn't feel like that when you're watching it, at least to me. But
yeah, when I started my notes, the first word I wrote down was deliberate. And I wrote it down complimentary because I was so sucked in by that first scene. Obviously there's tension there. He's working for the Nazis, but you didn't know how it was going to play out. He was so effusive and mannerly in dealing with La Petite, his praise of the cows and his daughters.
I have never wanted a glass of milk.
I know, right? It looks so good.
The way that I'm like,
just a glass of like fresh whole milk.
And they are so beautiful because the one of them
is Lea
Seydoux. I was like, wait a minute. We didn't know who she was when that came out.
Not when it came out, no. Okay, I saw a bunch of stuff when it came out that they were like, Lea Seydoux is in this movie. And I was like, I don't fucking know who that is. But she was already a big deal in France.
That's another thing that I think is very significant about this movie is I think it's like 43%. I saw at one point, but a large chunk of this movie is in another language.
Yeah.
Is in German or French. And
I think I read the other day, I think only 20-something% is in American.
Really?
So I think it's a larger
American
percentage. Yeah. Sorry, in English. I'm the editor.
I'm so sorry, listeners.
We speak so much American.
Well, okay. To be fair.
It is
To be fair, there is a dialogue in this that is American.
No, for sure.
Buongiorno.
Everything that comes out of Aldo Rain.
Yeah, Brad Pitt.
I wish I had the time to have watched the special features because I remember this Blu-ray had really good features. And there was a man that Brad Pitt based Aldo Rain on. It was, I'm trying to remember from the commentary that I watched 10 years ago, so I could be wrong. But there was I want to say a documentary. Oh, it was a documentary about that school in South, in the Southeast, one of those countries, Tennessee, Kentucky, Nebraska. Is Nebraska? Where's Nebraska?
Nebraska's Midwest. But we've each had an error. It's your turn now.
It was a school in, pick whichever one was right, Will, and put it in there. Missouri. Where they did the segregated proms up until 10 years ago.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yes.
Everything else was normal, but for some reason they still had a black prom and a white prom.
Vaguely in my head is Mississippi.
Okay.
Mississippi sounds right.
Yeah, I didn't even go for Alabama but anyways. And they did a documentary about it. And one of the dudes, I'll go with Ted, and he was just sort of like, well, I'm Ted, and we're doing this documentary. And I said, that's great, because I'm Ted, and that's what Ted does. He had that kind of quality to him. And when Brad watched the documentary, he was like, that is Aldo Rain. That is what I'm going to...
That's hilarious.
Another thing about this movie, because I was just captivated from the beginning, it has some of my favorite lines in any movie, and it has one of my favorite quotes that would probably make it on a top 10 list at the end of my life if I had to pick 10 quotes that just...
That was your test to get into the pearly gates?
Yeah.
Pick your top 10 quotes.
And it's when the farmer, it was La Petite, you said? Mm-hmm. When he was like, I don't know anything, I've just heard a few rumors. And
I love rumors.
He gets so giddy.
Right.
He's like, ooh. But he literally said facts can be so misleading, where rumors, whether true or false, are more revealing. Mm-hmm. And that is so true. In a dangerous way.
It reminds me a lot of Jordan Baker's line from The Great Gatsby when she says,
he gives large parties, and I like large parties. They're so intimate. Small parties, there isn't any privacy.
He gives large parties, and I love large parties. That was on the soundtrack. I love it when a soundtrack pulls quotes from the movie, because I'm just a slut for theatrics and oh. But no, because that's just so true, because facts they are so misleading.
History books are not true.
No, I know. I know that, but it's bad people, a serial killer can do gobs of charity. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But it's when I was in high school, every rumor was about me being gay. And I was like, that specific didn't happen, but guess what, babe?
Well, and to pull it into the current political climate too, what's a fact now?
Yeah. Boy. Literally nothing anymore.
Turn. I'm so sad. I also wrote down, I always thought it was so weird when Christoph Waltz said squirrel. And now I know it's because German people
Germans
can't say squirrel.
Can't say squirrel.
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 Squirrel? Squirrel? Say it.
Squirrel. It's a stupid
Squirrel.
word.
Squirrel.
Stupid
It's a
word.
squirrel.
If we have the time, we'll pull the video.
We will,
the clip of the Germans. Have you seen that?
Oh my god, it's hilarious.
German people can't say the word.
They don't
the
have
way-
the UIR sound. It's like vocally and physically their mouths can't make it
just-
because their language doesn't have that.
It sounds like scroll when they say it. And then there's a girl she's German teaching like a phonics video, and she's like, squirrel.
Yeah.
Because we somehow, in casual conversation, it's like one syllable.
Squirrel.
Yeah. But
it's hilarious. We should definitely
I
make
just
time to
thought that
watch
was
it.
funny. Also, this is such a showcase for characters and actors. There are so many characters in this movie, and every role, because I remember when I pulled up the Wikipedia, you know how they have like the cast list and stuff. Jesus, I'm looking at it now. It's like 50 people.
Yeah.
And usually Wikipedia, it's like 10. It's like the main people.
I think part of it is because there's a lot of named characters in this. Like everybody in the tavern scene has a name. Like the bartender and his daughter, all of Wilhelm and everybody at that table has a name.
I mean, the girl that comes in to ask Wilhelm for the autograph, her name is Babette.
Yeah.
Like, they say, everybody says their name. And it is like a play. I'm surprised this hasn't been adapted for stage, because it would fit really well.
He might not let it.
Well,
He owns all his shit.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
100%.
But, yeah, there are so many characters, and all of them, like, even the kind of bit roles get something. It's really impressive in that regard. This is a movie by a man who loves movies for people who love movies. And there's also something about it where it manages to feel like an old movie to me. Like,
well, yeah, I was going to say, I think that's why I forgive Tarantino his
sins.
multiple crimes, because I don't think there's an artifice when he makes his movies, and I like that, where it's like it does feel like he's a person who likes movies, who's making movies for people who like movies, and I like that because I feel like a lot of people, like big directors like Jerry Bruckheimer and Steven Spielberg, I think at this point they're like making movies just because, and they don't love it anymore.
I see. I get what you mean, but it's like, I also think the thing is they're doing it because they like explosions and stuff, where I was like, this is very much about like the craft of cinema.
And I think that's what sets him and people like David Fincher, and like that's what sets them apart.
And another thing about this movie, and this is my opinion, I could be wrong, somebody might wildly disagree with me, but this movie has managed to avoid getting lumped into that obnoxious film school bro territory.
Yeah.
Like Fight Club or Scarface or whatever, where it's like, those are excellent movies.
Well, Pulp Fiction is in that.
It is, absolutely. Group. But this one, and I don't know if it's the boldness of the story or the strength of the female characters or what exactly it is, because this is also one of those where this movie technically doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
I don't care.
But it has two of the best written female characters in modern cinema. Like, technically,
Julie Dreyfus and Melanie Laurent do exchange words that are not about a man.
It's not a meaningful conversation. I know. But I was gonna say that the farmer La Petite, it's Denis Menochet.
Oh, Menochet.
Menochet?
Yeah.
Okay. He's so good. He's so like, because I every single time I remember thinking he's so handsome.
He's very
and
handsome.
He's so quiet. He barely says anything.
I think that's also something that Tarantino's really good at, because I think he's heavily involved in casting. He manages to find these diamonds in the rough for like.
Well, I think he's a French actor, but.
Well, he is, but he finds them for roles that are nothing, and they make these nothing roles like elevate. And I mean, that is like a pretty big role, but it
is, as he's on screen for a chunk of time. But I mean, what does he say? Yes, is that like his one line? Like he basically doesn't have many lines, and what he does with the tears, and to put the audience immediately in that position where it's like, you catch on pretty quickly as to what's happening,
right?
And to be like, what is his duty? Where are his lines? We know he has a farm. We know he has 3 daughters. We don't know where their mother is. We know he is shielding this family.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you managed to not turn on him for surrendering the family, at least for me.
Well, no, I don't either. And I think you have to really put yourself in his shoes where it's like, they will kill me and rape and kill my daughters if I don't give, and then they'll kill them in the basement anyway. So I may as well make sure my family's safe. And it's also so true to what actually happened, had to have happened so many times in actual Nazi-occupied France.
And just the turn on a dime that Christoph Waltz does.
He goes dead in the eyes like a shark. It's insane.
Moving on from there, we do have the Bastards. What?
I was just remembering yesterday when we were watching it, and I was like, shit, I can't remember. What's the hot one's name? And you were like, what hot one? They're all hot.
Like, literally, which one? There were like 5 hot dudes in that scene.
Yeah, there's like, BJ Novak could get it.
Yeah.
And he's like the least conventionally attractive of them all.
I was surprised how much I liked the Bastards, because again, that's not really my thing.
I can't watch the scalping.
It's whatever to me at this point.
It's horrible.
I mean, I see effects. But
apparently, I was reading the trivia last night. Tarantino is the first one getting scalped, which I didn't realize.
He's also the hands that strangle Bridget von Hammersmark.
Boy, he's such a creep.
I actually don't. I think she's one of the ones who came to his defense.
No, I'm sure I wasn't being
Diane,
sincere. He's got some creepy tendencies. He has like a really Hitchcock vibe in the way he treats his women.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go right there. I was going to build to it, but it's just like there's a point in the movie, and after we first saw it, because I had a hard time with her death at first, and I was like, logistically, it doesn't actually make sense
that she dies.
Yeah, because at that point,
I think he's just angry at her.
Yeah, but it's like he's already made the decision to
flip.
To flip.
But he's angry at her. He's only flipping to save his own skin. She still betrayed the Third Reich.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, well, whenever we had this conversation before, you completely agreed with me. But
sorry.
I was just like, at the end of the day, Quentin Tarantino just wanted to strangle a beautiful woman in a ball gown.
Well, sure.
Because it makes for good imagery.
It's a good tableau.
I know you have feelings, Kristin, because you tweeted about it, but I remember being surprised at how good Brad Pitt was in this movie.
Yes.
It's not... I mean, I'm a moderate fan of Brad Pitt's. I haven't seen all of his work, but approaching it, I was like, really? You hired Brad Pitt for this role? Like, it felt odd. And then watching the movie, I can't imagine it any other way.
Yeah.
I also love Eli Roth. I've always kind of loved him, considering that I don't like any of his movies.
I was going to say, he's so over the top in this.
I hate that he talks.
Yeah, I think he shouldn't talk.
I think he shouldn't talk.
Because he puts on that horrible Boston accent.
It's so bad. And it undoes. His entrance is so good.
And so menacing.
And then when he goes on that baseball spiel.
And then he starts talking like he's from Southie. And it's like, dude, you're not threatening anymore.
It ruins. I think he's the one that he had a flashback scene. One of them had a flashback
that got
scene
cut.
Cloris Leachman is in it.
Oh, funny.
But
I think you're right.
Yeah, I just wish he didn't say anything, because otherwise I think the Bear Jew is such a great character, such an iconic character, and also he's so hot.
At least don't have him say anything until he's speaking Italian later in the movie.
Well, yeah, because he has a few lines in between, but I think it's especially after, braining that dude with the baseball bat, it like undoes all of the menace they just built up. It's one of the few things that I was like, ugh. And every time I kind of cringe. I'm like,
yeah, it's not the best. I will say that he did direct the Nation's Pride.
Did he?
Segments.
Okay.
So that's...
I knew that's an actual kind of like short film.
Yeah.
You can watch it on the Blu-ray. It's like 20 minutes, I think. But
no, thank you.
Yeah, same. We also have Till Schweiger.
Mm-hmm.
He's German.
Yeah,
like
in
German
real
actor.
life. Yeah.
And he's there were several people in this movie that had like vowed to never wear a Nazi uniform just in their career, because they're like,
I think Christoph Waltz was one of them.
Was he one of them?
Yeah. Well, he's technically Austrian, so
it's like, well, it's kind of like if you're a Muslim actor or like Arabic actor, you're gonna have to be a terrorist. If you're a German actor, you're gonna play it. And so many of them have played Nazis, and it's just, and it's something that Germany takes so unbelievably seriously, and
as well they should.
Yeah, to the point where like the marketing and everything for this movie had to be changed. And they talk in the commentary about the German premiere and about how they were really nervous going into the German premiere. And they were like, it actually was one of the best premieres because there was just sort of like, there's a catharsis in it. But they made exceptions for this movie because it was so good and because of what it ultimately does. And, you know, we mentioned the end. We kind of started there. I was wondering, do you guys have anything to say about this kind of, about revisionist history in general, or?
I mean, I think it's like wish fulfillment history.
Yeah.
Although it still was so late. You know, at one point, one of them says the Americans are on the coast already. They're on the beach. And so I'm just sort of like, it's already so late, but...
Nothing was really spared.
Right. But it's cool. I would kill baby Hitler. I'm sorry.
We did start to have that conversation the other day. We started to have the would you kill baby Hitler conversation. And I was like, first of all, just sure. I'd kill a baby, sure. But the problem I have with this is it's the topic of a Twilight Zone episode from the remake they did at like year 2000.
If you kill baby Hitler, does something worse happen?
Well, it's the baby that she kills is not the baby that goes on to be Hitler.
Oh.
It's like, it's Katherine Heigl, and she does kill the baby, but then it's like a homeless woman swaps her baby's place with it or something like that.
Okay.
And that's the baby that ends up. So that's where I'm at, where I was like, but what if in killing this baby, I'm ensuring that... But no, I mean, fuck babies. I'll kill babies.
I would kill toddler Hitler.
Say, as the person at this table with a baby currently,
with two babies,
I'm going to take an anti-baby killing stance.
God, you're such a wet blanket.
Yeah, interesting. We're not going to have you back. But. Well, I was about to make the joke earlier. I was going to say everything I know about World War II, I know from Eddie Izzard's skits.
Yeah.
And so if you did hear me say the baby's on spikes, that's an Eddie Izzard bit. Have you seen Glorious? Is it? No, it's not Glorious. It's
I think it's Dressed to Kill.
Dressed to Kill. Yeah. You have? Oh God, it's so good.
You want babies on spikes?
It tastes of chicken. Okay, that's enough. This episode took a turn. Yeah, this was my introduction to Melanie Laurent, and I don't think she's in enough things, or does she mostly stay in French?
I think she does a lot of French stuff. She is... oh, shit. No, I think that's Clémence Posé. Never mind.
After I watched the film, I looked at her IMDb page, and I have seen her in nothing else.
Nothing else?
I think...
Oh, she's in Now You See Me.
Right. Yeah. The first one, yeah. I think she is so good in this movie. I think it is a travesty that she was not nominated.
Yeah, Christoph Waltz was the only actor nominated from this movie. And it was not... It was, you asked earlier, it was not a strong year for Best Supporting Actor, and it was not a strong year for Best Supporting Actress. So really? She might have taken it.
I already kind of mentioned this before, but this is such a showcase. It's a 2.5-hour movie, which is fairly long for a movie, but it is such a showcase for so many people. It's like, I have a hard time picking a star. It's like, I suppose this is Christoph Waltz's movie by performance, but...
Yeah, but I think, I mean...
Like, who is this about, you know?
Well, sure. I mean, that's the thing is, it's an ensemble. And so I think it's, if we're trying to pick like 3 leads, I think it's Christoph Waltz, Brad Pitt, and Melanie Laurent. Mm-hmm. Those are the people that the movie is about. But I think it can't be discounted, and I didn't really go into it, but it cannot be discounted how good Brad Pitt is at characters. Because I was talking with Stefan on Twitter this morning, and he was like, he said he saw it said one time that he was like a character actor in a leading man's body. And I totally agree with that. But I think that, and I think he is a very good leading man, but I think he is also, nobody gives him credit for his character acting, which is actually very good.
Is off the top of your head, is there another example of character acting from him? I know Burn After Reading.
Yeah, I didn't really love Burn After Reading, but he's way different in that. He's fucking unrecognizable in Snatch. And Ocean's 11,
which I haven't seen.
Rusty is a weird dude character.
Yeah, he's good. This is leading man status, but he's good in Interview with a Vampire and stuff. So.
Yeah, but again, that's like, I think he makes very specific choices that most people most people don't give credit for the choices that he's making because he's so handsome.
Wasn't he a standout in Thelma and Louise too?
Yeah.
And that was, or was
It was
that
like his
just that he was
first movie.
attractive?
Well, it's like that he's really hot, but he's making choices. That's
Yeah.
the thing. He makes acting choices all the time. There's things he does in Fight Club, which is arguably his star-making turn. But there's things he does in Fight
Snort.
Club.
I like.
Yeah. But there's things he does in that movie that like a different actor wouldn't have thought to do certain things with their face.
And he's funny in that.
And
like,
he's funny in that. And I think that that's what gets really left behind when talking about Brad Pitt. We're like, yeah, he was making $20 million a picture for a while and he's been married to 2 smoke shows, but like he is actually very good at his job.
I do want to say I like Fight Club.
Yeah.
I am one of the people, I like Fight Club, but I kind of dog it because of its reputation. It like put it in this like,
Well, we like Fight Club the right way.
you say that too much.
It's a real problem.
But back to Melanie Laurent, I say this a lot, but it's true a lot, where it's like, she is very, very, first of all, she is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it takes a certain kind of talent to do, and it helps that she's French. It's a very French thing. But that she's not off-putting or unappealing because she's got an attitude the whole movie. And we talk about how like female characters with chips on their shoulders really, or like brats, or like it's tricky to pull off. An audience can turn very easily.
I feel like it's an understandable chip on her shoulder.
Right, that's what I was about to say. I mean, who's not going to side with the chip being anti-Nazi?
Dreyfus.
Right.
My whole family was murdered by Nazis in front of my face so much that my blonde hair was red when I was running away. And I think it's very specific because it's like this clearly Nazi soldier is hitting on her and she's like
An Aryan dream.
She just is like, for Christ's sake. Like,
but no, I commented on that where I was like, I said it like it was clever, where I was like, this is very interesting. Like, it's like a bit of commentary that she's like an Aryan dream. She's this blonde hair, blue eyed, fair skinned, like, and she's the Jewish one. And you were like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And meanwhile, like Julie Dreyfus is playing the German, the Nazi, and
Julie Dreyfus is a very Jewish last name.
The Emmanuel, when she changes her name to Emmanuel Mimieux, and I was like, I don't know, I guess Shoshana Dreyfus might have been a little bit of a neon arrow.
Like, it could have been Rachel Goldberg, and it would have been less obvious.
Rebecca, yeah.
No, I think her performance in this movie is one of the best ones. Just how like done she is with Daniel Bruhl the whole time, where she just is like rolling her eyes constantly, and it's just, especially in that first scene when he finds her, or the second scene when he finds her at the cafe, and she just is like, oh, for Christ's sake, what is this guy doing here?
And he's like, this was many people's introduction to him as well.
Mine for sure, yeah.
And he's also so good and so funny, and it like in this weird way, and this movie does this to me, where it was like there are parts in the movie where I sort of forget what's happening. Like I forget who we're rooting for, because
you're like, why don't you just be nice to him, Shoshana?
Like, is that just me? I was like, I'm weirdly kind of rooting for him in certain scenes. No, Tim is making a face.
No, I found him off-putting from second one. And I'm surprised you don't take this stance.
You are an incredibly good judge of character, and you have a very solid moral compass, where Kristin and I are so completely for sale.
Well, you want to kill babies.
I always joke that it was like I'd be Edmund in the Chronicles of Narnia. I would sell you all out for some shitty
Turkish delight
gelatin so quickly if it was like a pretty witch. Like,
yeah, I don't know. It's not that I like the character because he's so interesting, and I think Daniel Bruhl is so good at it. I don't think he's forgivable. He killed like 300 people.
Well, that's not even the part that bothers me.
I was going to say that aside.
Right. I mean, he was...
Is it kind of like a dead behind the eyes thing, like a Tom Cruise situation?
No, for me, it's more... She said she's not interested, and he keeps pushing.
Sure.
And that's why I'm surprised to hear you say that you were kind of rooting for him.
Well, no, not. It wasn't really. I don't know.
Especially not by the end. But.
Rooting for him is a weird thing, but there's a point in the movie where it's like, if you just go along to get along, this will be a lot easier.
Oh, I mean, no, I
like just like be nicer to him. He's like at this point very important. If you're nice to him, it'll be a little smoother.
I think that goes against her character.
Yeah.
Well, of course it does, but that's the.
At no point am I ever actually rooting for him. Like, I don't think she made a mistake or anything.
No.
There are moments.
Well, she made a couple mistakes, but
there are moments in those early scenes where, because he's being so charming in the way that we're conditioned and socialized, I'm like, oh, come on, cut the guy a break and stuff like that. And so it's like, I fall into that. And I do love that ultimately his charm and everything is betrayed by his true nature.
Well, it's all a facade. That's where the Tom Cruise thing came from.
I did give you a look where I was like, whoa.
Well, it's one of my favorite quotes that an actor...
Scientology's out there, but we're not Nazis.
No. It's one of my favorite quotes that an actor's ever said about preparing for a role, but it was Christian Bale preparing for American Psycho. And he said he drew all of his inspiration from this one talk show interview with Tom Cruise, because he was like, it's just this facade of like complete niceness and pleasantness, but there's nothing behind it. It's like just a mask.
I kind of like Tom Cruise a little bit, and this is not, we don't need to go off on this tangent, but
I did not like Tom Cruise.
I forgot who said it. It was a podcast I was listening to, and they were like, have you ever watched him in interviews? They're like, it's like watching an alien assimilate.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't make jokes. He doesn't know how to make a joke. His way of making a joke is repeating the funny thing the person before him said and then laughing very loudly.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's so weird when you actually notice it. Ever since then, I've watched that. I'm like, oh my God, it is very like human for president.
Yeah.
Like,
but that's what he reminds me of.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Bruhl's character, which I've totally forgotten his name.
Zoller.
Zoller.
Zoller, yeah.
I guess that does take us to your favorite scene, the diner scene.
Well, the strudel.
Well, specifically, and that's where I'm at this place where I keep saying like a play where I was like, man, that scene, it's two different scenes, but it's one location and it's going on for a long time. And the way that they're going back and forth between the languages and stuff is really interesting. And because that happens a lot in the movie where characters within scenes don't know what other characters are saying and stuff.
Well, I have a suspicion that only occurred to me this time watching it, but I suspect Shoshana can speak German. I think she can understand German a little, if not like fluent. But she has a couple looks in her eyes where she's like, I see where this is going.
But that's when they decide to host a movie premiere at her cinema.
Yeah.
And they like decide for her. Because I obviously saw the opening card, the Nazi occupied France. But I think that for a long time was just a stream of words to me. And so it was really this viewing where I was like, there was a part of me when I was 23 watching this where I was like, well, why does everybody keep going along with everything? And I was like, oh, they have to.
Yeah, they've already taken
they're
over.
Not being asked. They're being told. Like,
that's why she gives her papers to Frederick at the beginning, because he asks her name and she's just like used to it. Where she's like, okay.
But so specifically the strudel part is your favorite.
It's just so good. And another thing I liked. No, there's so many layers to it, because I do like the opening part of that scene a lot, where she's there with just Joseph Goebbels and Julie Dreyfus and the one guy who's just so done with it. The other German
Steve Buscemi.
Yeah. I like that a lot, because at one point Goebbels says something about like I've already had my like I'm against this, as you well know, and he's like lighting a cigarette and he's like, noted. It's just like, okay. And I just love his attitude about it. So I like all of that, and when they decide and everything. And I also just love listening to Julie Dreyfus say shit in French.
Yeah.
She
I
just goes,
wish she was
merde.
I wish she was in more things, because she's great in Kill Bill. She's Sophie Fatale in Kill Bill. But yeah, I don't know. She's also the one from the cigarette ad, the like red apple cigarettes.
Okay.
That's her. And
so when they're all leaving after they've decided to have, or they've decided that they need to look at Shoshana or Emmanuel's theater before they can go further, and then Landa comes in, and the music, first of all, the music that starts is like the most anxiety-inducing music, because it's very thumpy, but it's also, there's a background that's, oh my God, it's ridiculous. He like comes in and again is very effusive and like very pleasant and charming at first.
Let me just ask, and I'm looking specifically at you, Tim, because you're the one who just saw it and has only seen it one time. Do you think he knew
who she was?
In watching it, no. But then seeing the ending, maybe. It depends on when you think he decided to make his turn. And what prism you want to view it from that angle.
I don't think there's a chance in hell he knows.
Oh.
I don't think I don't think.
Interesting.
Honestly.
You think he's just suspicious of her because he's suspicious?
I don't think he's suspicious at all. I think he's actually being charming in that scene. I think it's all.
But at the end,
He's doing his job.
In the end, again, he goes dead in the eyes and looks right at her, and he's like, "I meant to ask you something else, but I can't remember."
So you think he does know who she is?
I think he's at the very least, he is suspicious that she might be Jewish.
I don't think so. But I mean, I there's no real way unless Christoph Waltz is listening to this and wants to call in.
Yeah, I don't know. He goes shark eyes again at the end of
He
that
does,
scene.
But I think we are so put in her perspective.
Mm.
I mean, do you honestly think he remembers every victim of his intimately like that?
Well, he also didn't see her face.
Mm-hmm.
So, unless there were photographs of her
I think it's
somewhere
because
else.
we are so completely in her
That could be.
perspective. I think he's actually just being charming, and I mean, he might be getting off on the fact that he's making her nervous because
Maybe.
he's a powerful man and a dangerous man, but
I just think there's no. Well, there's so many things about the whole scene because I don't know, he's very menacing. He orders milk for her. It's all
that would
very
be
menacing.
the argument that he did know.
Yeah. And he's like, no.
I don't think so. I don't think
well.
he does. But it's good.
Yeah.
And it's part of what makes the movie so good is those. And I've said that we've been doing this for about a year and a half, and I've been studying the art of storytelling my whole life, but I've really come to the conclusion that some of the best things are things that there aren't answers for.
Right.
And for a long time, I was always focusing on what's the best answer. And now I'm like, sometimes it's about what's a good question.
Yeah,
And
I agree. I mean, it could easily go either way. And I think it's sort of one of those things that probably Tarantino was like, you can read it however you want.
Mhm.
You can read it like he knows, or you can read it like he doesn't.
And also just like the milk too. It's like that strudel. It looks, and the cream, the way that, and you,
Okay. This scene does a lot of ASMR things to
you were
me.
like, this is an ASMR dream.
So in the first place, he's very deliberate about all of his movements and the things he's doing. He's a very deliberate German soldier. Everything is like presented in the exact order it's meant to go in, but it's like when the spoon hits the sugar bowl and then the sugar goes in his coffee, and then it's like when the guy brings the bowl of cream and he scrapes the cream out and puts it on, and then when they're cutting the strudel, it's like everything is so perfect and so deliberate, and it's wild to me how people can like
That is funny
make stuff like that
Tim,
work.
you said your first note was deliberate. And
Yeah.
It's just like,
Well, I will say this. You found that the most tense scene in the movie?
It's my favorite scene.
Okay, not the most tense.
The tavern is the most tense for me.
Yeah, see, for me, I like the scene. I thought it was well acted, especially, all the things you pointed out about him, and then her reaction once he leaves the table, that kind of shut her
I-
down.
Because I think even her reactions while she's speaking to him, she does a lot of times we use this as an insult, but she does a lot of really excellent eyebrow acting in that scene. There's a lot of like eye area work that's the things that people are able to choose to do is beyond me.
Let me just say, I don't want to have to play poker against Shoshana.
Same.
Like, because the second he's out of that room, she like unravels.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess moving on, we are going a little bit long, but that's our first t-shirt. But we are then introduced to one of my other favorite cinema characters of all time, and also one of several alter egos of mine. I have a lot of alter egos.
We ever get famous, that's going to be Will's hotel check-in name.
Bridget von Hammersmark. I had a long list. Jordan Two Delta's one of them. Alan DeGeneres is one of them.
Alan DeGeneres.
Oh, I remembered my point. I was going to say it's a joke I've made several times before, but I was going to be like, do you think when Christoph Waltz is like taking roles that he'll only see scripts that have a scene where he gets to menace a beautiful blonde woman over dinner?
I mean,
Like,
I don't know why
Water
not.
for Elephants, this, Tarzan, like there's so many. That's a staple of his thing.
He does.
That was worth it.
Yeah.
That was worth it.
He does menace Reese Witherspoon pretty bad in Water for Elephants.
But yes, Bridget von Hammersmark.
That's it. That's the tweet.
No. I was trying to remember what my other aliases were, because I said Alan DeGeneres and now I can't remember. But regardless, I think she's so good. I think Diane is so good in this. And it's interesting because it's historically accurate that there were several. I cannot remember which one, but there was like a German actress who did this because they mentioned her in the movie.
Marlene Dietrich.
Was it Dietrich?
They did
He
mention
was like,
Dietrich.
don't say her name in my presence ever again.
Oh no, that was some shit.
Yeah, that is someone separate, but they do mention. Or maybe it was just based off her. I don't know.
They mentioned, they said her name. They said Dietrich's name,
They
but
did.
I don't remember who Shoshana says I love her. And Goebbels is like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm. But that brings us to the tavern scene. I think that she's a very fascinating character, and especially to be introduced so late in the movie. But then the tavern scene, like I said, is 30 minutes. That's like this huge thing. And it's so entertaining. And to run the gamut, it's so funny at places. And I even think it's kind of funny once shit's going off the rails. Because especially the one that I always laugh at is Sexy Steve Buscemi, whatever his name is.
Hellstrom? Maybe, in the movie?
Yeah.
When they're talking, once things have already gotten tense, and she starts to like chime in again, and he's just like, "Shut up, slut!" And it's just like, I don't know why. It's just it's so good, and I love watching her. And I mean, obviously she's an actress, so it works. But I love watching her act circles around the three of them.
Yeah,
and it's like she's the only one keeping the train on the tracks for a hot minute. And I actually love Wilhelm. I think he's so great. I think he's so funny. And there's a part of me that was like devastated when she shoots him.
Yeah, but
she had to.
He had to.
But I was just like, but poor Maximilian.
Maximilian will be fine.
Well, she saved him from growing up to be a Nazi.
True. Good point.
We also want to play that game.
Yeah.
It's so wicked.
It's just called Celebrity, right?
I think, but they play it in Marie Antoinette and stuff. And it's also, the movie is so wicked. And the fact that you can make something so vile and mean-spirited funny and enjoyable is a real talent.
Especially the King Kong.
Oh, man. God. That's,
Well, I had
vile. Like,
yeah, I couldn't remember exactly what he said, but I remembered it being a little more on the nose where when he says, "Am I the story of the American Negro?" I thought that he like went into a longer, it's like one of those things where it's like, "Am I the story of the oppression of the blah, blah, blah?" Like, I thought it went longer, but it didn't, but it was still, yeah.
Then I must be King Kong.
Yeah.
Oh, God. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not funny to some other people, but
I think the way it's played is, and the way it's written is funny.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so...
Well, and also just Diane Kruger saying, "Genghis Khan!"
Well, and that's something that I've said, I say now is I'll say like, "Hello, my beauties," to people, especially like dogs. It's like Jen has 2 dogs, and I'll be like, "Hello, my beauties."
Yeah.
Because she says it in German, and I've been meaning to learn it in
how to say
German,
it.
but I
do weirdly love a German accented English.
Yeah,
it's very well. My dad's girlfriend is German, and she speaks with not a heavy accent, but she speaks with an accent, and I don't know. There's something kind of cute about it.
I mean, I love the German people. Germany, and I mean, we did our ancestry, and I have a decent chunk of German, and it's like, they've taken a lot of heat for obvious.
Yeah, but they owned their heat.
They did. And also, it's funny how, in a weird way, this movie is almost a little bit like a love letter to Germans, too. There's so many German things about it. Like, even the three.
Yeah.
That's something I would have never known. But I love little things about culture that way. The way people do things differently. And even just when Wilhelm is just like, "Your accent's weird." And like...
I do want to spare a moment to speak about Lieutenant Archie Hicox. Yeah. First of all,
damn good scotch.
Indeed. Michael Fassbender was born in Germany to a German mother and an Irish father, a German father and an Irish mother, and then he was raised in Ireland, and so German was his first language and English was his second language, and then evidently he's very good at different English dialects. So this accent he's putting on in this movie is so ridiculous. It reminds me of Donald Gleason in the Star Wars movies because it's such an over-the-top, like, old-fashioned movie English accent. Like, it feels like he went to Eton or something, and it's just, like, so ridiculous. And I love him in this movie, even though it is all his fault.
It is the whole time, because you do that thing that you do sometimes with movies where you're bargaining with the movie as it's happening, even though you've seen it
Come on, Archie.
You're like this one time, because she's playing it so cool.
So
like,
cool.
She's totally just like, we'll make this work.
And he just is like, get the fuck away from us. And I'm like, God damn it.
God, and just the way that the scene plays out, because there's a point where once the jig is up and they have the guns pointed and everything, and I'm like, well, how are we going to get out of this? And Steve Buscemi is like, he was like, now we both know that neither one of us are walking out of this place. And I'm like, oh no, like really? I'm like bargaining with it too.
Yeah.
And because you even said that you were like, you thought this was the first thing you had seen Fassbender in. And I was like, well, we saw 300.
But he's unrecognizable from one to the other. So that long hair does a lot for his face.
In a weird twist, I like him better.
It just does a lot to his face, not...
Well, 300, that's a whole other thing, but...
We'll get there.
Actually, yeah, we will, but...
Have you seen 300?
Nope.
Tim will come back for all these, like, early to mid-2000s.
That might be a good one to bring Martin in for, but...
Maybe.
300, but he was on the ship. He was underwater. He was, like, on, what do they call it?
Submarine?
Yeah, but, like, at leave or at sea or something.
Yeah?
There's a term. He was there when he saw it, one of the...
he saw it on the submarine?
Yeah, one of the sailors had it, and apparently they were, like, obsessed with it.
Sounds about right.
And they, like, knew the movie front and back, and they would reenact it and stuff. And like,
it sounds like being a naval officer on a submarine is just being, like, a giant nerd. Because isn't that when Mike read all the Game of Thrones books?
At sea, yeah, that's what I meant. They were at sea. But anyways, and I feel so, God, I forgot her name. They said her name. The waitress.
Oh, yeah, the daughter.
Although watching it this time, I'm like, bitch didn't duck.
She did not duck.
She just stood there going, ah! But yeah, oh God, it's so good. And so we already said that the Wilhelm and then she shoots him and stuff. And then Brad Pitt menaces her in a veterinarian.
It makes sense because it's like he knew from the beginning that having the meeting in the basement was a bad idea. But there's no excuse to poke your finger in someone's bullet hole.
You've never squirmed, like not squirmed during that scene.
Literally no excuse.
Because that's also a couple of my other favorite. She gets some of my favorite lines in the entire movie as well. Because the one that is my favorite, it was on my like Facebook profile for a while, where he tells her to say that she broke her leg mountain climbing, and it's like, that's German, right? Y'all like mountain climbing, and she goes, well, she was like, for me, she was like, I like smoking, drinking, and ordering in fine restaurants, but I see your point. Yeah. And the tripping the life fantastique down the carpet. That's the other one. She's so good.
I do love that she gets like a little, not a stiletto, but her cast is like a high heel. So wonderful.
And I said this when we were watching it, but Tarantino said in the commentary that there are so many points, because you said they like telegraphed the whole tavern scene in the beginning. They're like, this is a terrible idea. And he sort of is talking about there's so many points in the movie where, you know, you think they're leading you to believe like this is going to be fun and work. And he was like, and it's just like, there's so many bad plans. Like he's like, they're doomed from the start.
Like nothing but bad plans. Yeah. And then it ends up being so hilarious that it's like the 3 officers that spoke German are all dead. And so they have to use the 3 American. First of all, I mean, Aldo is Brad Pitt. He doesn't present as Jewish, but Omar and Eli Roth like couldn't look more Jewish if they tried.
Well, and I just like, I think you did at the beginning, but I just love when Landa is letting them have it at the premiere because he approaches her and she's like, oh, silly me, you know, I hurt my leg mountain climbing. And he just like laughs in like open mouth, leaning in, laughs in her
like he
face.
has to walk away.
Right.
And she's just sitting there, just like with her hands on her hips, kind of like.
That's ridiculous.
Gorlami.
Let me really hear the music in it. Dominic DeCoco.
He does it the best. He honestly gets away with it the best.
That was one of those parts that made me laugh too, because he was the third worst.
Yeah. And he ends up being the best one at it.
Well, and I remember that from the trailer, the Brad Pitt saying the buongiorno. Like, it's so good. And yeah, so we already kind of talked a little bit about him strangling her, and that scene is so good. You're right, it is outright Hitchcocky.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it did catch me off guard because he was so reserved and
then he just
polite throughout the movie, and then boom, he's at it. Yeah, it did mean,
Do you think it was necessary, or?
I think it depends on how you want to view the movie. At that point,
off by it at first, but in hindsight, I can't imagine it another.
Well, see, it didn't bother me as much that she died, as you mentioned it earlier. Because for me, did he decide to turn? Because at that point he had put 2 people with bombs strapped to their leg in the theater. He didn't know for sure at that point that. Well, maybe he did.
He did because he'd already taken the bomb. Yeah,
he
took the bomb from Brad Pitt and put it under the.
Not before they went in their seats.
No. But before he. Oh no, not before he goes to Bridget.
I guess it is after
Does he?
the scene with Bridget.
Yeah.
Right, and then he takes Brad Pitt out. He calls immediately after he strangles her. He makes the call and says the guy in the white tuxedo. They tackle him. They get the bomb.
Yeah, you're right.
So is that the point where he realizes I'm fucked and he decides to make his heel turn, or?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I mean, he also knew that
he's not
Hammer's Mark wasn't on the up and up by that point too.
When he strangles her, he's not fucked yet. He knows those 2 guys are in there, but he also knows what they look like. He could go get them.
He could also set off the bombs.
Well,
did he know her? I don't remember. Did he know her personally before?
I think they had met.
Just socially?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I mean,
yeah,
I
I
guess when you're that high up in Nazi Germany, the circles were. But it is good. It is iconic. And, you know, it is the kind of thing that for me, I kept waiting for her to like use that cast or something.
Yeah.
To get, like the one up. And it is kind of interesting how sometimes those things work. And ultimately, you know, there's 3 survivors in the entire movie.
Yeah.
So once you realize, you know, what a suicide mission it is.
I think Marcel might get out.
I figured he didn't.
He just stayed and died.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Because there's a point by the end where I'm just like, oh man, nobody's coming out of this, are they? Like,
well, and there was a few of the bastards that weren't in the theater that may have survived.
Yeah.
You just don't.
well,
come
it's
back to
BJ
them.
Novak and
Yeah, but there's like a handful of others who weren't in the tavern and who weren't.
Right, you just have Bearju and
okay.
DeCoco.
Okay.
I don't remember his name. I remember his Italian name. They were the only other guys in the theater.
Well, and then the 3 that we lost in the tower. Yeah. And there's 2 plots because Shoshana and Marcel.
There are 2 plots to bring down Hitler in this movie,
and they both were.
Yeah, and it's not even like they're working at cross purposes, which you could see at a certain point.
But they were separate.
They are separate, but they both are like planning it for this premiere, which I think is hilarious.
It is really satisfying. This is a controversial take, but I'll go ahead and say it, that in the right circumstances, I honestly do like violence in movies. I do think it can be fun and cathartic and shocking and stuff. And
Maybe you should watch Reservoir Dogs.
Maybe.
It's so over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I know he sings into the guy's ear, but
Well,
I just like that when that scene finally does come where they're like raining down hellfire on
all the Nazis.
The Nazis. And it's like, I mean, it's a lot of generals and stuff, but so it is like, you know, people with blood on their hands, but it's also just like the aristocracy.
Yeah.
And there is just something kind of like
Eat the rich.
and yeah, there's enjoyable about watching the carnage just and especially I mean the way that Julie Dreyfus gets gunned down and Hitler and all that. There is something about it that
Well,
you're just
fucking
sort of like
Donnie shoots Hitler so many times.
And it there's something kind of fun about it where you're just like fucking yeah.
It's like a fantasy. It's like a wish fulfillment.
Yeah. And I do like that. I don't think, you know, I heard what I was about to say. I was going to say, I don't think we're at risk of rewriting history. And I was like,
we literally are
doing it right now. But that's not Tarantino's fault or responsibility.
No.
So I'm so curious how Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is going to go.
Well, it's about like the 70s. It's like Sharon Tate and stuff.
Yeah, but the Manson family is in it. And so I'm like, are we going to rewrite history again here? Like, is Sharon Tate going to be this like badass final girl?
Is Margot Robbie going to live?
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just sort of like, what are we going to do with this?
Interesting.
And I mean, maybe I'm setting both of us up for failure right now. But
that could be interesting, though.
Cut to 3 months from now, and I'm like, it was a weird choice to have Christoph Waltz barge in and strangle Sharon Tate. Do you think it was necessary? I don't think it was necessary.
Or you could wait 10 years and have my take on it.
There you go. But where we'll be recording from our private jet.
Thank God.
I told you, I don't remember if I did tell you, but I like didn't turn the TV off fast enough the other day, and The Kardashians was on, and that is a shockingly watchable show sometimes.
Disagree.
It really is. They were on a private jet going to like Maui, and I was like, it was kind of fun where
I don't want them to have good things.
It's not so much about wanting them to have good things. It's that thing that it's Piers Morgan. I hate that Piers Morgan because it's such a good point. But
You're digging your hole.
it was like 10 years ago. They were on like the Tonight Show or something, and he, like Jay Leno or whoever it was at the time, asked them a question. They said something, and Piers Morgan goes, "Do you know what your brand is?" And they were like, "Family."
Oh, sure.
Loving each other in spite of hard times. And he was like, "Your brand is actually," he was like, "you make the glamour and excitement of celebrity accessible to the everyday person."
Yeah.
And I was like, that's actually what they do. And when I was watching the show, that's kind of, you're living vicariously through them. That has nothing to do with any of this. So to wrap it up, were you surprised when Hans Landa decided to become the double agent?
I mean, a little, I guess, the first time.
I mean, you just watched this. Well,
the thing that tipped me off when I felt like it was happening is I remember in the very first scene, he relishes the fact that he's called the Jew Hunter. And then in that scene where he's with BJ Novak and Brad Pitt at the end, I can't remember BJ Novak's character's name.
Me neither.
Regardless, he's off put by it, and he's like, ugh, I can't stand it. And I was like, oh, this is happening. So I did catch it. So it didn't necessarily catch me off guard at that point. If you had asked me midway through the movie, would I be surprised? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that one thing, because it was shocking to me, like how he embraced that name at the beginning. And so when he pushed it away at the end, I was like, oh, this means something.
Well, it also exposes that he is an opportunist. He is in it for himself and himself alone. And I don't know if that forgives because that's literally the ending part of the movie where Brad Pitt was like, he has had this code. And I also meant to say in the very beginning that I do find it fascinating that Hans Landa has such a code, like such a code of conduct. And he, as vile as it is by human standards, he has his own set of like rules and priorities that he follows.
Yeah.
Or maybe he doesn't because he throws it all out the window. But.
Well, no, I mean, I think he does, because especially he's so fastidious and in everything that he does, the way he looks, the way he is so like present and again deliberate with all of his movements and things he does. I mean, I think he does have that code, but at the end of the day, your code goes out the window when it's you or them.
Or you could argue that he's just calculating.
Yeah, calculating.
Well, and because that's the thing where I was like, Brad Pitt himself even acknowledges it, where he's had this code and he's like, although you did betray the Reich, he was like, I guess that earned you a certain amount of whatever the word was. I don't quite remember, but.
I just also, when he was like, I would like some land on Nantucket. And I was like, there are so many Jewish people in the Northeast. I don't know what you're thinking of.
And I don't have anything to say about it other than it's one of the greatest lines in cinema history, but we did just like gloss over that's a bingo.
That's a bingo.
And he's like, because that was Andrew's favorite line. Andrew says it so many times. And because I was even mad at you the one time when you looked up that picture of young Christoph Waltz and you literally were like, ooh, that is nice. And I was like, you should have said that's a bingo. That's a bingo.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
I do love the end. It's such a perfect ending because it's like there's no other way it could end, and it's kind of telegraphed through the whole movie. And I just love that, like when he shoots the other guy, and Landa's like, "What have you done?" He was like, "You made a deal for this life, or for you made it."
He made a deal for his life.
That man's life, and he's like, "They're gonna." What does he say? They're gonna like. Oh, they're gonna have your head for this or something, and he's like, more like being chewed out.
I've been chewed out before.
You'll be shot for this.
Nah, I don't think so. More like chewed out. I've been chewed out before.
Just like I can hack that.
Aldo Rain for president, but and then they do the thing, and that's the first time we see it because we don't see it in the other times, and
also
it's just,
horrible.
Oh, it's so good too in the music. Like I don't know, it's we didn't really say, but Rip Shoshana, and I guess although that's a pretty spectacular
and Zoller.
Yeah, that's a pretty spectacular.
She kills him and then he kills her, so it's like fine.
Shakespearean, and it just I do love the notion at first that it's like you think she's gonna fuck him, and it's like he's been trying this chivalry thing the whole time, and he's like, oh, I just needed to manhandle you a little bit, and part of me was like, oh, is she really just gonna do this? Like, I mean, he's cute, but
shockingly, no. This might be the only Tarantino movie without a sex scene.
No,
there is a sex scene.
Death Proof doesn't.
Dreyfuss taking it.
That's right. God damn it. Never mind.
I love the little tiger fascinator and everything. So I think that brings us to the end. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to say? Did you have any final notes on
I stopped taking notes halfway through.
Any final thoughts? Like,
No, I think we touched on everything.
do you think you're going to watch it again, or would this be?
I would absolutely watch it again.
I think it's one of the ones that improves.
On
Like,
rewatch.
yeah, I have probably seen this movie probably 30, 40
That's a lot.
times.
I think I've definitely seen it like 10 times, but 30 is a lot.
Yeah, probably. I've seen it.
More than once a year since it came out.
Then it can be. But I mean, I watched the week that the Blu-ray came out. I think I probably watched it like 6 times.
Oh, all right.
And because I even did drawings. I did drawings of all of the characters, the main characters, because I was drawing at the time, and I was just kind of so obsessed with this. And it was when I was home for that winter where we were like snowed in for like 2 months in Maryland. And I had to fix the Bridget von Hammersmark one in the computer because my drawing just looks like Liam Neeson in a gown. And I had to fix it. I fixed like her cheekbones and stuff in the computer,
hilarious.
and she looks better in the one I
That's terrifying is what that is.
Do I have it here? I might be able to show you guys. So I recommend watching it again if you
10 years from now,
Yeah.
I'll get back around to it.
And we'll have you back on for 300
yeah,
at some point.
I think we landed Martin on that, didn't we?
I was gonna say I thought there was another one that we mentioned, but yeah. So do you have anything else or?
No, it's definitely one of my, it rotates in my top 3 Tarantino movies between those ones I said earlier. But yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, as always, you can follow us on Twitter @SoI'mWatching, Instagram @SoI'mWatchingThisShow. We are also on Facebook and Tumblr, So I'm Watching This Show. Are you going to put any soundtrack on the Spotify playlist?
If there is any, I don't think there really is though, but we'll try and see if we can pull a couple of the dialogue.
Sure. And then other than that, just please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or YouTube or wherever else you listen. Bye.